My name is Bob Wares. I'm Chairman and CEO of Osisko Metals. And Osisko is a base metal development company focused two projects in Canada, both brownfield projects. One Northwest Territories, the Point project, essentially zinc and lead. And the second one, copper project in Canada called Gaspé Copper. And both projects have significant resources, are moving towards development, pre-feasibility, feasibility studies, etc. So Point we've been working on since 2017. It's a brownfield site, originally operated, the mine operated by Cominco, closed in '88. Significant resources left. We have, in the inferred category, we have about 60 million tons, pit constrained, all shallow mineralization, so mostly pit constrained or very shallow underground. About 60 million tons, 6% zinc and lead. And that project is more advanced than our second project, which is Gaspé Copper. We'll get that in a minute. Point right now is under a current joint venture agreement with Appian Natural Resource Funds. We're essentially free carried to FID, which is essentially shovel ready for a mine build. And Appian will be investing about $100 million, 75 roughly in the ground to advance the project. It includes feasibilities, IBAs, permitting, and so on, and about $25 million in cash payments to Osisko Metals to acquire a 60% interest, giving us a residual 40% free carried interest in the project. So a project gets involved to mine build and or mine build decision, and no dilution for shareholders. Gaspé Copper is a deal that we signed with Glencore about a year ago. Again, a brownfield site. Gaspé Copper was in production, closed down in 1999. One of the significant copper producers in eastern Canada. And that project right now should close this summer. We finally got governmental authorization to transfer the old mine site from Glencore Canada to Osisko Metals, and that's going to give us 100% interest in the property, nominally in exchange for issuing a $25 million US convertible note. That's the direct acquisition cost. Glencore retains a 1% royalty on the project that we are currently targeting for this property, plus 100% offtake on all copper production. The other commitment is to bring the project again to FID, or shovel-ready status. And right now we have a 5-year timeline, approximate expenditure of $55 million. We're looking at the order of about 8 billion pounds lead, zinc and lead, and 3 billion pounds of copper in the inventory. I would say at this point, about 90% of that's going to be successfully converted into reserves. So that makes basically Osisko Metals, early stage still, but one of the leading base metal developers in Canada. And of course, the zinc and copper are considered critical metals for the energy transition, so very significant, I think, for Canada as a whole. Mostly, again, at the stage we're at, there are no environmental issues. It's drilling, and drilling programs are easy to manage from an environmental standpoint. Social issues of those projects are more complex. In the Northwest Territories, we've dealt with two First Nations groups and the Northwest Territories Métis Nation. So there are 3 groups for which we've been negotiating agreements. We secured earlier on exploration agreements with 3 groups. Now we're moving on to IBA, which stands for Impact Benefits Agreements, in view of putting the mine into production. So right now we're at the framework stage, discussion stage, with the objective of having IBA agreements signed with all groups by the time we obtain our permits in about 4 years' time. And Gaspé Copper, right now we've recently engaged, or we're starting the engagement process with the local communities. There's an old mining town of Murdochville beside the mine site. Still about 650 people who live there, so we've engaged discussions with the communities. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to have my first meeting with the Mi'kmaq First Nation, which are located in southern Gaspé Peninsula. Next catalyst for Gaspé Copper, closure the Glencore deal in the next month or so. And then moving on to this year, finishing the drill program, moving on to a PEA study. For Pine Point, we're going to finish the summer drill program, and that will allow us to move directly to feasibility, which should be launched in Q3. So both projects, again, advancing on a 4 to 5 year timeline to get to production decision. But in the meantime, we'll carry on with exploration on both properties. Got to feed the market, and we recognize that for shareholders, when you get into feasibility permitting, it's pretty boring for the shareholders. So you got to maintain exploration programs. We can't even exclude the possibility of taking on new grassroots or virgin drill programs to push ahead the agenda and look for new deposits. It's very nice to put old mines back into production, but this country needs new discoveries, new mines, because the demands on metals that's going to be induced by the energy transition on a global scale is very significant. I don't think the downstream market really appreciates it. The demands are going to be made on the mining industry. And it's not clear at this stage that the industry is in a position to respond in the timeline that's being imposed by certainly the Paris Accord, for example. For shareholders, again, Osisko relatively early stage for mining development. It's a bet on copper and zinc. In my opinion, if you believe in the energy transition, you have to believe, especially in copper, and you have to believe that copper prices are going to improve and that these projects are going to significantly gain in value. Right now, for a developer, historically, most mining developers trade at about 0.2, 0.3 net asset value. Right now, we're trading at 0.08, so obviously we're undervalued. But with an increase in copper price, our shareholders should be rewarded, and I believe that will certainly come sooner rather than later.